Hey everyone, in today's session we're going to cover charge attempt logs. So if in previous sessions we talked about our hosted pages and the merchant configuration, a charge attempt meaning the attempt came from the merchant to send a transaction through server to server or from our payment pages to the process website and from there to one of the acquirers configured on the system. Why do we need to have a look at the charge attempt? This gives us a better indication of what was sent to the acquirer or to the third-party PSP and what was the response that was given, and giving us more tools to understand better the transaction or any issue that may arise. To go to charge attempt log, we'll go to Settings, Logs, Charge Attempts. This will give us a list of all the latest charge attempts that we have in the system. Of course, at any time you can click the filter to filter down to get to a specific log that you might be looking for. What will we see on the list? We'll see the identifier, the ID for the charge attempt. We'll see the system times. Our servers are configured under GMT time zone, but the users using the system can set their own time zone in terms of UI that might conflict between GMT and their time zones. With customers from the US, Singapore, and other parts of Europe, there's always a difference. So when communicating with us about a specific transaction or attempt, it's better to use the system times, which will help us better understand and pull the relevant logs from our servers. Server indication, since we're using on a farm and have multiple servers, that might give us an additional indication if the problem comes from one server configuration or the merchant configuration. The duration of the transaction, how long did it take us to process the request? The merchant name, and by hovering over the name of the merchant, you can quickly access the merchant configuration to see if it's a problem there or it's a problem with the request. The IP address that was used to send the transaction, either from one of our servers internally or from the merchant transmitting the server-to-server request. MPI is the third-party MPI provider that's used for 3D Secure, so it will give us an indication, are we using a third-party provider, and what is the version of 3D Secure, meaning no 3D, V1 or V2. We have the reply. This is an internal configuration that we have in terms of a unique identifier for a session. So meaning if you're using cascading and sending the transaction to more than one provider, the identifier will always be the same. Reply code and the transaction ID. So let's expand one of the requests. So what do we see here? The reply code was a success. We processed it through directly the process website. The merchant who sent the transaction used a GET request, which is a good indication. In case the merchant's using POST, they'll have to add an additional header to the request and might result in issues on why we're not seeing all the parameters in the request themselves. And then we see the query string, what was sent by the merchant as part of the request, the company name, the currency amount, and all the additional details that came with the request itself. On the right side, we'll see here the time string. This means internal checks in our system to see the steps that the transaction took place and which one of the steps and how long did it take to reach it. And the final part will be the session content and what additional parameters we have in it. When we scroll down, we can actually see what was the request that was given to us by the merchant, what have we passed on, and what was the response string that we get. In this case, it was a system transaction, so the log is very minimal because we sent it internally. With transaction to the acquirer, you'll see a full log here of the request going out to the acquirer and the response coming back. This, of course, is a good indication on how to use the system and how to give better tools for you to debug transactions before escalating to support, giving you the tools to help your merchants with their processing. Thank you. In the next session, we're going to talk about more merchant configuration and more tools to help you and understand better the traffic coming through.